Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. And this is going to be step one to get you on the right track to win the $1.5 million available at the very top of Best Ball Mania number 5. Use code Mayo right now at Underdog Fantasy and get yourself a first-time match deposit of up to $100. Or if you deposit more than $100, I think it's up to $750, you could get a bonus of up to $250 as well. Jake Ciely and I from theathletic.com are talking about rookies. Jake, this is step one into me figuring out what to do this football season. I don't want to talk about Dynasty because, frankly, I don't care about Dynasty. If you're watching this for Dynasty, check out Jake's work at The Athletic. Check out Destination Devi with my guy Ray and Jordan over there. They have that covered to the nines. I just don't want to talk about it. I feel like I feign talking with you about it every year, but I just don't care.
I know. It was funny that when you texted me, I was like, wait, we're not doing Dynasty at all? I was like, this is the year that you finally gave up for it.
Yeah, it's not like I play. Like, it's fraudulent coming from me. I don't play Dynasty. I don't care about Dynasty. I care about doing my best ball drafts on Underdog, mainly using code Mayo in order to do that, just like all of you should too. But just even my redraft stuff, like this is what I want to know about. Week 1 for DFS, I need to know about the guys who are in the best positions and where I should be drafting them so far. Obviously, I haven't done a complete 150 rankings yet. I want to get the assessment going through of where I should draft these guys. What are the best positions? So we're going to talk about all positions, all rookies for this year only, 2024, where you want to draft them in best ball, who you want to stack them with, and for DFS purposes or your redraft leagues, like when do you take these guys? So who is the best rookie and why is it Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Are we talking non-quarterbacks? I mean, honestly, it's Marvin Harrison, but I think you can make a case for Jaden Daniels if we're going to include quarterbacks here. But for Marvin Harrison, it's very simple that he's walking into one of the biggest workloads. Actually, he's walking into the biggest workload for wide receivers that we assume. And he's also walking into a team that doesn't have Daniel Locke, the combination of Daniel Jones and Drew Lock. Doesn't have those jabronis throwing the football. Actually has a quarterback. Now, of course, Kyler Murray can get hurt, but you're talking about that volume, talking about whether or not you want to get to the argument of Nabers being the better talent, blah, blah, whatever. They're the same tier. That's all that matters. 130, 140 targets should be easy for him. And at that case, that talent level with Kyler Murray throwing the ball, wide receiver 1 territory already. I already put him in the conversation with the back end, Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk guys.
Would you rather draft right now, if we're going through everything, Marvin Harrison Jr. or Chris Olave?
Ooh, Marvin Harrison.
Okay. Drake London.
Who's tied to?
Drake London or Marvin Harrison?
Marvin Harrison. Now,
DJ Moore or Marvin Harrison?
Marvin Harrison. I'm kind of apparently down on DJ Moore, according to the public right now. I put in quotes.
I mean, if the public is coming at you about wide receiver rankings in May, I think it's them who has the problem. There's a lot of time to do this. Like, we don't know how that's going to all shake out. And in what world, honestly, would DJ Moore be better than he was last year?
And that's the biggest thing. Like, even so, my projections came out on the site today, and you can go in there and be like, hey, this is why I do it every single year. Jake, you're dumb. You know, I see DJ Moore getting 27% of the target share. Like, he's going to dominate. Keenan Allen's toast, whatever it might be. And you can change it and see what happens. But as of right now, even 130 targets feels a little aggressive, and I like Caleb Williams a lot, but you have Keenan Allen, Odunze, the tight ends, the backfield, so 130 targets, and what that does in the projections, that still checks him in only as wide receiver 19, and in my rankings, I have him at 22. So Marvin Harrison's a fringe wide receiver 1, DJ Moore's a low wide receiver 2 for me.
So Marvin Harrison's essentially a fringe top 10 guy.
Yes, he could have a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson-like season. Obviously, we're not going to put him inside the top 5, but we're talking about the talent, opportunity, volume, quarterback play, offense, everything. All the boxes are checked. If you swapped in Nabers, I would say the same thing about Nabers. It's just that Nabers went to the Giants. It's the talent and the opportunity mixed, and that's the same thing we saw with Chase. It's the same thing we saw with Jefferson. It's the same thing we saw with a lot of wide receivers.
So Marvin Harrison right now in Underdog Best Ball drafts is going pick 13 overall. That's wide receiver 9.
Saying that.
Does he become a fade at this point, or does he make it easy? Like when we're thinking about best ball, we're thinking about stacking our players together. That Kyler isn't as expensive as some of the higher end quarterbacks that maybe this is the high end Cardinal that you take. And then the rest of the Cardinals, like where's McBride going? McBride is going at Trey McBride is pick number 45. So you can get first round Marvin Harrison, fourth round Trey McBride. And then with Kyler Murray, you would end up getting, let's see here. Kyler Murray's pick number 79, so a seventh round guy. And then you can fill in the pieces in between all of them if the Cardinals are your preferred stack, which it does seem. I mean, we used to talk about this all the time with, it's funny that we've been doing this so long now that the guys' names actually start to elude me. But he had Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree in Oakland that they were just, it was Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders were the two that I was going with.
Okay.
You have, like, there's no Rondell Moore anymore around. So outside of those two in the Cardinals offense, who is getting targets?
James Conner in the backfield. That's Michael Wilson. But I mean, we're projecting Michael Wilson to take a step forward. He could struggle again. It could be Greg Dortch. Wouldn't shock me. I like Michael Wilson more, but we're talking about wide receiver 4s. We're not talking about potentially wide receiver 2s where it is like Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, and you're going to step in and be like, well, one could siphon right off the other and ruin things. Honestly, you're talking about a tight end in the realm of, we want to compare last year, Puka Nakua's situation. That's kind of what we're stepping into volume-wise here, but unlike Puka Nakua with Cooper Kupp, and granted Kupp got hurt, he's walking into clear volume. Like if you told me at the end of the year, let's like even go into the future, Pat, and we're doing this show next January, and we're like, these are the top 10 wide receivers and team target percentage, and Marvin Harrison was 7th, wouldn't shock me. Like, and that's why we're taking this. And to your point about this, is it's one of the cheaper 3 trio stacks, and you actually get a tight end out of it. And you're talking about, okay, he has to face the 49ers twice, whatever. Outside of that, this division doesn't have defenses that you're like, oh my God, you don't have to worry about this 2 times a year.
And even last year, especially in the second half of the season, the 49ers pass defense wasn't any good.
No.
So we watched that all playoffs too, that they were like, hey, what if we just throw long on the 49ers? Maybe that will work. And it worked for the Lions for 2.5 quarters. It worked for the Packers. It worked for the Chiefs. Not saying that, I mean, the Cardinals off. I mean, it's not going to be a good offense, but James Conner was wildly efficient last year. I guess Michael Wilson would be the other guy to throw into the stack to go along with it. But I guess my issue would be that Harrison going number 13 right now, that's above Barkley and Jonathan Taylor and London and Ayuk and Devontae Adams and Olave and Kyron Williams, all of that tier of players that it almost seems like his upside is now baked into the draft pick. Like how much better can he realistically be in his rookie year? Is he going to be better than Jamar Chase this year? Probably not.
No. So when you said that before we jumped into the next question, when you said at wide receiver, was it 8 or 9? You said it was off the board at the end of the first round?
Number 9. So he and Garrett Wilson and AJ Brown are going back to back to back. Like even Puka is going at wide receiver 6. Like I love Puka. That's way too high because Cooper Kupp might just be fine this year.
Well, and that's the problem. So like, I don't have a problem with the overall ranking. Like, just so you know, like my rankings right now, as of today, Puka's 7, Ayuk's 8, Harrison's 9, Evans 10, Adams 11. But to this thing, and Meany and I talked about it on All in Football, those wide receivers are probably not going to end up on a single one of my team as of right now, because this tier for me starts with Nakua and ends all the way. You're telling me that T. Higgins can't do this? T. Higgins, when healthy, has already been top 12 with Jamar Chase doing his thing. And granted, I'm not going to say take T. Higgins over Ayuk and Nakua, but if you're going to tell me 3 rounds discount, 2 rounds discount, this tier is just enormous to me. Like, look at last year. We do this every single year. Look at last year. Yes, there's a benefit to getting a top 3, 4, 5 wide receiver. But as soon as you hit that gap, wherever it breaks, whether it's the 4th or 5th or 6th wide receiver, that gap break ends up being 1 point per game for like the next 15 guys. And that's why I'm not going to spend my draft capital in this range.
Okay, so if Marvin Harrison is the best, you mentioned Jaden Daniels would be the second best. Why is I get that the running is there, so there's always going to be that floor with him in Washington. But if we're thinking about like pure upside purposes, what if Caleb Williams is just good? He has weapons. He can run. It's not like he's going to run for 1,000 yards, but he can still scramble on the ground and extend plays and pick up yardage that way, almost in the vein that Russell Wilson used to do or Aaron Rodgers used to do. Like they had value on the ground, but that wasn't their focal point of value. But just what he's able to do through the air might be enough to beat Jaden Daniels.
Well, so I'll give you an example of why it's a little bit different. So I feel like aggressive on both of them. For passing, for my projections, 4,000 yards and 26 passing touchdowns for Caleb. That feels like he could even be low, but I think that's a pretty aggressive rookie season. 4,026. To your argument here, 348 rushing and 4 rushing touchdowns on the ground. On the flip side, Jaden Daniels, 3,900 passing yards, and people probably tell me I'm nuts for that. That's one where I could see people wanting to pull back on. Only 21 passing touchdowns, but here's the biggest one: 700 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. That gives him almost a 20-point gap over Caleb. Now, again, you want to say he only throws for 3,400 yards, that's fine. He's still ahead of Caleb because that rushing upside, I honestly think that he could get to Lamar Jackson's level. Will he do it? Probably not, because there'll be drives that end because of his decisions. But he's Justin Fields with better decision making. He still makes some bad ones, but he's also got a much, 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 much better deep ball. And he's got great talent with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. You just go down the list. They got him a nice safety valve in Luke McCaffrey. Caleb's got the better trio of wide receivers, no question about it. But what I said about Caleb, where I'll actually agree with you on a little bit on the upside. If you told me ceilings, I think they're very similar, because here's the thing that Caleb has to do. You just mentioned it. He can run. He could even run for Josh Allen level. I mean, we're talking 500, 600 and 7 or 8 rushing touchdowns on the ground, because he will call his own number. But what we saw in college last year, not 2 years ago, is that instead of running, he tried to stay in the pocket and make those quote unquote, what people want to call them, hero throws, making the big play that 50 times out of 150% of the time it fell to the ground because it was a bad throw, bad decision. And he could have taken off for 7, 8, 10 yards. So if the coaching tells Caleb, hey, look, get back to what you were doing 2 years ago, scramble. When it's there for you, scramble. People are going to be playing back on defense because of the wide receivers, and he gets to 500 plus yards, then yes, Caleb Williams is right there with Jaden Daniels. Much more risk with Jaden Daniels too. So I have no problem if you want Caleb.
Yeah, so that would be the big thing for me of why I would have Caleb and take him. And that's the way that it's shaking down already. Just on Underdog right now, number 12 quarterback coming off the board is Caleb Williams, pick 101, whereas Jaden Daniels is pick 117, the 18th quarterback. So they're in the same neighborhood within 12 to 15 picks of each other right now. But the other quarterbacks that are going in that range, like Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, and Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, and Tua would be like the closest comps, all within that same range. Trying to think like who I would actually want.
I would take Caleb, all of them,
and then I'd take Jaden Daniels. Like I think Kirk Cousins is going to be good, but we're talking about fantasy here. I'd rather have Jaden Daniels. Just hope that works out.
Exactly. So if we're talking, let's say it works out for both. They both hit their peak. Who's going to have the bigger fantasy season? Jaden Daniels. Kirk Cousins will be like.
I don't know. That's the thing. What did you have him projected for, like throwing wise again?
3,921.
I mean, it feels ambitious.
Hey, I believe as the passer. So here, let's do it real quick. Let's pull off. You want to pull off 500 yards? Pull off 500. We'll pull off 500 yards, 3,420. So he goes from 330 fantasy points to 310, which 310 gives you still right at, if not more than some of Kirk Cousins' seasons. That's my point. Like, Kirk Cousins can do this, but we're also talking about Drake London and Kyle Pitts, not Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison or whoever, Adam Thielen, when Adam Thielen was good. I just feel like people are getting a little too excited over Kirk Cousins being, hey, he's been the most disrespected quarterback for 4 years, that now it's come around and people are like, yeah, we'll take him as the 11th quarterback because he keeps doing it. And now I'm like, well, that was good when we only have to pay QB 18 price for Kirk Cousins. I don't want to pay QB 10 or 12 price.
Well, you don't have to. He's QB number 17 coming off.
Oh, so he's back down there again.
Yeah, he dropped back down. The guys that are actually going, like, it wasn't so much the Cousins thing. Like, I would take Jaden Daniels over Kirk Cousins as well, just to roll the dice. It was more of the upside of Caleb Williams, I think, is in a different stratosphere. Unless, listen, if we're talking about ceiling, the 100th percentile outcome, the way that Daniels plays is sort of like a cheat code type quarterback. Yeah. But we just never see that kind of, like, we've had 2 Lamar seasons where that's happened. We got like a third of a Kyler Murray season where that kind of happened. Whereas with Caleb Williams, it feels like he can be additive on the ground substantially enough to elevate himself, but also potentially contend in the passing game as well and put up like 30 plus touchdowns if everything kind of breaks right, especially although their defense was a little bit better last year. So maybe they try to play tighter games. I wouldn't have either one of them in the top 10, I guess is my point, where I would draft Anthony Richardson inside the top 10.
I would too. Actually, so if you go by not my projections, I have Anthony Richardson 6, Jaden Daniels 12, Kirk Cousins 13, and Caleb Williams 14. Just because, again, my hesitancy on the fact that Kirk Cousins and Caleb Williams passing, going to take Kirk Cousins 10 out of 10 times. It's whether, but I will move Caleb Williams up. And if we're talking about this range, again, we're talking for underdog, we're talking for best ball 100%. I'm going to take Caleb Williams every single time. If it was pure redraft, as of today, it's a coin flip for me, unless I see some of the reports from multiple people that say, hey, they're coaching Caleb up to run a little bit more. I just don't want to see him. He stayed in the pocket way too much last year, and those led to interceptions, bad plays, incomplete passes, turnover on downs. Like, that's what I want. Like, it's crazy to say this, but we usually go the opposite direction when it's like, hey, we want these quarterbacks to throw a little bit more. Jaden Daniels, don't look at your first and second option and then take off running before like 3 seconds they've even elapsed. It's funny that with Caleb Williams, we're actually encouraging the opposite.
In my mind, I'm trying to think of like who the best comp in current day football would be, because obviously Russell's a bit washed, so is Aaron Rodgers. I kind of see Caleb Williams as a better Jordan Love. Does that make any sense?
I can see it. I call me crazy. I said he's Josh Allen. If he runs as much, that's the thing. His peak is Josh Allen. His peak.
I don't think that's the type of player that we're going to see, but that's me.
And that's what I'm saying. You got to get him back to running. And without it, I think you're looking at like world's better passer, Sam Howell. Like that kind of running. Like maybe we only see the 300-400 yards, 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns, but then, he's throwing for 4,000 plus yards with 30 touchdowns and 10 interceptions versus 20 and 20.
So would Nabers be the next rookie off? So you would go Harrison or Daniels, then Williams, and then Malik Nabers, or would Rome Odunze be the next guy on the list? Or would it be someone from farther down? Because I know that everyone's really high on Xavier Worthy. I feel like that is I don't want to say a waste of a pick, because if it works, like the 10% chance that it works out great. But I feel like we've just seen this guy on the Chiefs every year as either a Tyreek Hill replacement or when Tyreek was still there. Basically, like, why is this guy any different than McCole Hardman?
And why is it any different than everybody else who, like, when they traded for Kadarius Toney, or then they drafted Sky Moore, and then Rashee Rice worked out with the volume.
But he wasn't the same type of guy, though. He wasn't like a blazing speedster. He was like a big body possession guy. Well,
and here's where I'm going with my argument to completely agree with you. The reason I'm off on Xavier Worthy for redraft is because he replicates what Marquise Brown does. And I'm not saying I want Marquise Brown. I'm not saying go draft Marquise Brown. But they signed him, and then they drafted, like, this almost kind of feels like, hey, we're thinking more 2025. Like, this is the same trap people fall into every single year with go get a new young wide receiver for the Chiefs. And I love Xavier Worthy, the talent, and they spent high draft capital on him. So if he eclipsed Hollywood Brown at some point of the season, but I just don't know that it's going to be locked in day one. And even if it is locked in day one, you're going to tell me 100 plus targets as a rookie with those options that they have? I just know. Malik Nabers is my number 2. He's barely inside the top 25 for me. I think people are way too high on him because they're forgetting who the quarterbacks are for that team. And let's be honest, 120 targets on this team are not 120 targets on most teams. My number 3 is somebody you haven't even mentioned yet.
Can I take a guess at who it might be?
Sure.
Is it Brian Thomas?
Yes.
Yeah, it should be. Like, just to look, it has to be him or Keon Coleman, I think.
Keon Coleman's 4th. There you go.
Like, because we're talking about situations here. And
yes.
Listen, it's the same argument that everyone kind of made, and like the people who wildly overdrafted Jackson Smith and Jigba last year, being like, well, his talent is just so good. It's like, there's 2 other guys they throw the ball to. Like, there's only so many opportunities to go around. And yeah, he's going to have a game or 2 where he looks awesome and he's going to be great. You're never going to start him on your team.
I'm with you. I have Odunze at 61. To put you an idea of like those names
amongst
that are with
rookies
him,
or receivers?
No, receivers. He's there with Joshua Palmer and Gabe Davis and Jerry Jeudy and Khalil Shakir and Rashid Shaheed. Now, granted, there'll be some drafts where I'm like, you know what, I'll take them clearly ahead of those because the upside is tremendous. And like, let's play well, what if DJ Moore, Keenan Allen gets hurt? Like, obviously, but as you just mentioned, that was as soon as they drafted him, I said, remember Jackson Smith and Jigba before you go crazy. That's the exact name I threw out. I'm so glad we're lockstep with that. And also with Brian Thomas, the name I threw out was He's going to step in and immediately produce what Calvin Ridley did last year. 100+ targets, 1,000 yards, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns. And honestly, I think Brian Thomas will be more consistent in his numbers than Calvin Ridley was.
Well, and they got rid of Zay Jones, which is very helpful. He even took Zay Jones's number because that was the whole thing last year. It's like, is Zay Jones playing? That was more for Christian Kirk, but it was just funny that he had such a negative impact on everyone. He just wasn't very good.
So he's even better if he's going to assimilate between those two. If he's going to take Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones, well, then maybe he should be top 20.
So it would be, so you would have Thomas at 3. So you'd still have Nabers ahead of him, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it would go Harrison, Nabers, Thomas, and then Coleman. I mean, I don't know if Coleman's actually good. He is a superstar of social media. Like, I can't
100%.
watch enough of this guy, but I did find it funny. And because I try to stay out of the whole, listen, I'm not a draft scout. I barely watch college football. I only care when they get to the NFL. And then you can tell me sort of the comps with everything. And then you had all of the draft nerds who were like, wow, his spark score is so bad. He's basically the slowest player in the NFL. And then you hear like actual like former players or like the tape grinder type people. It's like, this guy's game speed is way faster than his straight line speed. Like, he's an actual guy. Now, I'm sure he falls somewhere in the middle of that. But if you plug him into an offense with Josh Allen, where he's essentially wide receiver 1, isn't he?
It's arguably, yeah. So to go to what you said, I actually pointed out for your comp, I actually said he's the best of Kenny Golladay and the worst of Kenny Golladay. Those are his outcomes, which is just tells you like how bad it could be.
Yeah, like
that being said,
is he like a Devontae Parker type of guy?
That's fair. That's also a good one because he has
like
better
Kelvin
speed.
Benjamin?
No, because I was gonna say that's good because he's got better speed than Kenny Golladay. My concerns for him was the fact that his routes aren't clean, and that will lead him to not getting good separation because he does have the speed, but when you don't have clean routes, this goes back to, I just used this on my podcast this morning. You and I talked about this years ago because we've been doing it forever. Marquise Lee, amazing, was so much better than everybody he played with, but in the NFL, because he was lazy, he didn't separate because everybody's on his playing field when it gets to athleticism. Keon Coleman not being able to clean up his routes, if he's not able to, the separation concerns me for this reason. When did Stephon Diggs take a step back in the second half was when he wasn't getting open as quick. Now, was that Brady in the offense changing things? Was it getting Kincaid more involved? Whatever it might be, Allen stopped looking his way as much because he wasn't getting open and separating as much, which we know that Josh Allen took a step forward when they traded for Stephon Diggs. So I say all that to say, if Keon Coleman doesn't step in day one and separate well, I don't know if he is the number 1 from day one. He should be, but I don't think that's a guarantee.
So does that mean we need to be drafting Shakir or just pushing Dalton Kincaid into the top 3 of tight ends?
I think Dalton Kincaid is in the conversation for top 6 or 7, not top 3, but I do have a lot of Shakir. Like, I'll take the Flyers late round. Like, I'll be taking Shakir alongside of Flyers like Mike Williams. The dude can stay healthy. Cool. He plays for the Jets too. I got 2 guys who have to stay healthy, Aaron Rodgers and Mike Williams. I'll take a Flyer and Shakir on that level. And you're asking me though, Matt, you know I have a soft spot for Shakir, so.
Well, just looking at it right now, like Shakir is coming off as number 57 in terms of receiver on Underdog, picked number 121. For some context, amongst the rookies that are going right now, Coleman is going after him at wide receiver 62, pick 134. Xavier Worthy, 47th wide receiver, pick 102 overall. And then Thomas comes in at wide receiver number 38, 88th overall. So we take a look.
Where's Kincaid?
I didn't search by.
Sorry. Just because I was going to say, like, you could almost do a Josh Allen and stack all of them at those costs.
So Kincaid is going at 56 overall. That's tight end 5.
Ooh.
Yeah, so there is the premium. So right now, the first tight end being drafted is Laporta, then Kelsey, then McBride, then Mark Andrews, and then Kincaid. And it seems like Andrews and Kincaid are kind of a coin flip for where they're going. It's like it's Laporta, 1 level, Kelsey 10 picks later, McBride 10 picks later, and then 10 picks later, it's like Andrews, Pitts, and Kincaid all in the same little cluster. And then you get to Kittle, Ingram, and then Brock Bowers ends up coming in at number 9. I don't know if I trust this at all of being a relevant fantasy performer year 1. Like, could he be tight end number 9? Sure. But like, why would I have him over David Njoku at this point? And you know how much I hate Njoku, but
I know
whether it's Deshaun Watson or not, or whoever the backup is going to be, like, they have three guys they can throw to, and I feel like they're just going to throw it to them.
Well, honestly, I have Jake Ferguson in front of him. I have Kincaid. I still have Goddard, and I'm not even the biggest Goddard guy, but I like Brock Bowers. I was actually defending him after the draft, and people were immediately like, there's no way he'll even be a tight end 1. And I have him at tight end 12, to give you an idea. I'm not as high as those drafts are. I understand the upside for what he is, but we're also talking about, I'm not even that worried about Michael Mayer. He was losing snaps at the end of the year, to be honest, in the passing game. Yeah. So to tell me that like Harrison Bryant doesn't get involved, like, it could always happen, but Adams is going to soak up a ton. I think that Brock Bowers has to contend with Jacoby Myers, and if he can become the number 2, but I don't know if he can, but I think there's a possibility. You're also talking about an offense that just might not be very good.
That's the whole thing, is that how many touchdowns is he plausibly going to score? Like, if you have Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams on this team already, and Adams is just going to insert him as the 30% target share because he's Devontae Adams. And then Myers will probably be somewhere between 17 and 24, depending on let's say 15 to 25. Make it some nice square numbers for people. But he'll be in that range. In some weeks, it'll be more, and he'll handle a lot of the underneath stuff because that's what Jacoby Myers does. So now we're upwards of 40 to 50% of the target tree gone already. Throw in 10 to 15 for running backs because it feels like that's how this offense is going to work. You have another tight end already. You drafted this guy to be ahead of him, but there is a learning curve, and the offense might stink anyway. Like, that doesn't sound great to me.
No, and that's the thing. Is like, if you told me Gardner Minshew was starting the entire year, which I think is possible, I'd feel a little bit better. But I do think they're going to try and make Aiden O'Connell work at times. But even so, you bring all that up, the touchdowns, to give you an idea, projections wise, like I have 7 for Adams. Where's I'm looking for good old Jacoby Myers.
Jacoby Myers
5 and 4.
First touchdown in a game 5 times. So he has 5 touchdowns.
There you go, 5. There you go. 7, 5, and I only have 4. I have 4 for Bowers. But that's the thing. I have Bowers line at 63, 741, and 4. Sure, that puts you as a tight end 1 because that's all it takes to be a tight end 1. But that feels like a tough hill to climb to get to 5. I actually have Kyle Pitts at 5.
I mean, I get that there's relatively little upside with Evan Ingram, but I just think through attrition, Evan Ingram is going to outscore him.
I think so as well, especially if we're talking half of full point PPR. I could see the case in non.
I wish we would be talking about half or full point PPR. I don't think anyone plays the other format anymore.
I know. I said stop calling it like standard or whatever. They're like, no, I don't think.
Call it like old. Like if you're above like 60 and still playing fantasy football, like the jabronis we used to work with at Roto Experts, like they're still doing standard content.
They're still playing old. Just call it old. Yeah, I like that.
Old scoring. Yeah, no one's playing that anymore. So with Ingram, he's going to have his bad games, obviously, but his bad games tend to be 4 for 42. Which isn't good by any stretch of the imagination, but like it's weirdly not bad at tight end. And then you get his 14 for 81 games, and hopefully he scores a touchdown.
Yeah, I have Ingram 1, 2, 3 spots in front of him. I have Ingram at 9. I guess I could just looked at the 9 and done the math.
So yeah, I don't know how he's draftable, and maybe he's good enough to overcome. Like this would be the spot where we just talked about being the third receiver on a team. So if you're a Odunze, that maybe there's a connection that you have with Caleb Williams and you're just inherently better, or Keenan Allen goes down or DJ Moore goes down and you get thrust into a role. But if he ends up being the Jackson Smith and Jigba of this year, well, that's not going to be any good for your fantasy team. But if Bowers is the JSN of the Raiders and they have like a competent offense, that would actually be good at tight end.
Yeah, I mean, look at the tight ends from last year. I mean, anybody who was involved for like 2/3, and like George Kittle being one of them. I mean, you're talking about the 49ers offense, the Lions offense, and honestly, basically Laporta was the 2. Ingram, I mean, if you want to bring in Ridley. But then if you get anybody that was involved as like the 3, the clear 3, when you're already talking about like problems like Dalton Schultz and, Kyle Pitts. Dallas Goedert, that's the best example. Dallas Goedert on the freaking Eagles. And I know it's Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts isn't going to throw for 4,400 yards, but this dude can't do anything anymore. Like, I don't even want Dallas Goedert anymore because he is clearly the 3. And you have to remember, he played like half of last year with a broken arm. No, I get that. But what I was going to say is like why I would even still take Dallas Goedert is because whose offense is better. Yeah. So that's kind of where I was going with it. Yeah, well, I mean, even to look at Dalton Schultz being drafted as tight end number 13, 122 overall. And then Brock Bowers is going 40 picks ahead of him.
I would take you straight up in a bet. Like it's probably 50-50. Schultz outscores Bowers this year.
I don't even really want either one of them at this point.
I don't either, but I think that's kind of my point, that he should be sort of buried down there as...
You know what I would take up in a 50-50?
You can call it tight end 1 if you want, but realistically, there's 7 good tight ends? So they're all tight end 1s potentially.
Yeah, I was going to say straight up bet, I would say TJ Hawkinson outscoring Bowers in his healthy games. Like, I think Hawkinson's in play to put up Bowers' numbers for however long he plays.
Like, when do we expect Hawkinson to be back?
I think, isn't it 6 games that they're assuming as of today?
Let's call it 8, so he gets 9 games. Yeah, I would say that Hawkinson probably outscores him over the course of 9 games.
See? And there you go.
Is Hawkinson someone you would, like, waste a bench spot on holding for a while?
If I had IR spots, yeah, absolutely.
If you didn't?
No.
Let's say he was healthy for this entire season. He was going to play. He comes into week 1 healthy along with everyone else. Where would you rank Hawkinson? Because honestly, like I probably wouldn't have him above Kincaid. Would I have him above Kittle? Maybe. Like that would be sort of the range, I think.
Yeah, that would be that. I'd probably have him in that tier ahead of Njoku, probably behind Kittle and Kincaid, but like kind of right in that range of, look, you know, now we're talking about McCarthy at quarterback. Is Hawkinson going to be the 2 or is Addison going to be the 2? And either way, you're talking about 140, 50, 60 targets going to Justin Jefferson first. So now you're talking about the offense after that.
I mean, there's a chance Bowers doesn't outscore Luke Musgrave.
I was going to say, there's a chance he doesn't outscore Jelani Woods.
Who's left in Indianapolis now? Is Mo?
They're
Ali
all still
Cox?
there. Mo Alley Cox, Jelani Woods, and
Granson?
Kyle Granson. Yeah. They're all
I
still
mean,
lingering.
What about one of the Jets tight ends?
Oh, Ruckert? I saw.
Yeah.
I see Jeremy Ruckert getting a little. We've got nothing left to talk about. Buzz going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like Ty Conklin still there. I always enjoy Conklin as a great DFS play on like an off week when someone's out because they had CJ Uzama, but I don't know what the hell happened to him. I guess
what I think is funny is everybody trying to pump up Noah Fant again. I'm like, really? Again? They're doing this again?
Make it happen. Make it happen.
I'll tell you my super. Tell me I'm nuts on this one. Like I want somebody to tell me I'm nuts on this one. But Jonnu Smith with the Dolphins, just because he's Jonnu Smith and he's just going to do it and annoy the living crap out of us.
Well, it's not like they have. I mean, were we sweating Durham Smythe, who was
that's
somewhat
exactly
viable some weeks?
I think he could surprise people.
I mean, he was someone that surprised people on a weekly basis last year when I kept for the first 8 weeks when I had him ranked over Kyle Pitts, and it was actually working out.
Yeah, that was completely different reason, though.
He's still weirdly like he's one of the few tight ends with his supernatural athletic ability that can stiff arm someone on a 1 yard out and run 80 yards to the house and no one's catching him. Like there's very few tight ends who have that sort of like speed athleticism.
And that's the upside of him. The problem, so the only other, and just to kind of commandeer this whole thing from you here, the only other tight end I have a little bit of interest in here is Benson with the Commanders now, just because they don't have anybody. Obviously, they didn't bring back, what's his face, Logan Thomas, who couldn't stay healthy. And just the opportunity, like, there's the chance he could be the one. I mean, I know people are talking Theo Johnson for the Giants, but I don't think Daniel Bellinger is just going to get cast aside and never step on the field. And then Jatavian Sanders, he's with the Panthers. I actually think Bryce Young is a great free pick at quarterback this year. Everybody wants to bury him.
Hold on. He's a great free pick over who? Because he does cost you a roster spot. Remember, like would you rather have a sleeper handcuff running back? Would you rather have?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
I'd
rather have Bryce Young. I would take Bryce Young over like Baker Mayfield. I would take him over Stafford because we're talking about, look, it was as bad as it could get. But the one thing, I'll spin positively for Bryce Young. Through the draft, through the trade of Deontay Johnson, through everything they've done, even Jatavian Sanders at tight end, they are trying to make Bryce Young work. But what they're trying to do is what they didn't do last year, which is the same thing the Bills did with Josh Allen, and the same thing the Panthers did way back with Cam Newton when they stopped trying to give him 6'8" Kelvin Benjamins at every single position and being like, oh, what? He could just throw the ball up. No, it doesn't matter because there's 5 guys draped on him because he doesn't know how to separate. They got him separators. They drafted Leggett. They have Deontay Johnson. So if Bryce Young is going to hit, this guy was just the number 1 pick. I understand people are already like, oh, it's over. It was such a mistake. And maybe it is. But let's not forget the talent that we saw in college. Let's not forget the talent that made him the number 1 pick, whether you want to agree with it or not. I would take him over Stafford and all those kind of guys down in that range. Honestly, if you told me because of who Trevor Lawrence is at this point of his career that he outscored Trevor Lawrence, would it shock me? Is it a 10% chance? Obviously, but Bryce Young is not dead.
There's zero chance that I would take him over Matt Stafford. Zero.
Really? I would just take him.
You have two game breakers at receiver with Matt Stafford, and he's just going to chuck. That's all they're going to do. But
here's the thing. Stafford only, what was it last year? What was his points per game? Was it even top 20? Stafford was 23rd. Okay, wait, hold on. Let's throw out Jeff Driscoll. He doesn't count. He was 22nd in points per game. That's the thing. He was still only 20. He got there because he played all 17 games.
He didn't play all 17 games. He got hurt against
Oh, yeah, that's right. He did. He did. Yeah, I mean, but he's still QB 22.
Puka's season too.
But your counter argument shouldn't have been so much that your counter argument should have been that Bryce Young was QB 40 points per game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the difference between the guys that you pointed out, Josh Allen and Cam Newton, just to call those two guys, first year in the league type players, they showed stuff with crappy teams. Bryce Young showed nothing. He was no good all year.
Don't disagree. It was as bad as it can get. I have more faith in Bryce Young.
See, I don't. And he's also small in stature that maybe Jaden Daniels can be faster than everyone else and outrun them and maybe avoid some of those hits. But Anthony Richardson's bigger than Jaden Daniels, and he was hurt basically every game from running. So that's a problem.
It's fair, but Kyler Murray's played a full season.
Kyler Murray, I wouldn't put into the same vein as those guys, though.
Bryce Young? The exact same stature. Exact same guy.
Bryce Young, yes, but I wouldn't say that Kyler Murray's a way better athlete than Bryce Young is.
Okay, they don't disagree there. That's why I said they run. Bryce Young, for whatever reason, doesn't like to run. Well, he's also not as fast.
No, and listen, in the situation that they both find themselves in are completely different. But Murray's just a better athlete. He has a better arm. He's faster. He's more elusive. Like when you see Murray run at his peak, and he's like being elusive and juking guys, like he looks like he's Lamar in that way. But Lamar's also a very smart runner. I find that Kyler has become a smarter runner as the years have gone along too. No one's ever going to be as smart of a runner as, let's say, Arian Foster, who just went out of his way to avoid contact to try not to get hurt for certain parts of the season, which, with fantasy owners would be so devastated. It's like, why didn't he try to dive for an extra yard? It's like, well, he ran out of bounds so he could make sure he could get the next carry to get more yards. So he keeps himself a bit more fine-tuned to get through these holes and keep the speed up as the game goes along. But
that's how Marvin Harrison Sr. got to where he was. He always ran out of bounds right before he got hurt or hit or hurt.
Yeah, shocking. Not taking hits. Great way to prolong your career. Stay healthy. And it doesn't seem like Daniels does that at all. Like Daniels Daniels just takes hits.
So that's the thing is not only does he runs kind of straight. If he was a running back, you would call him a straight line between the tackles, one cut runner. That would be who he is because he pulls his eyes down, tucks, runs. But unlike what you're bringing up for these points of why I understand the risk of people saying like, okay, so there's two parts here. We know FB Injury Doc did his report and found that running quarterbacks do not get hurt that much more than stand in the pocket quarterbacks. We could just go to last year as proof. That being said, the more hits you take, the more likely you are to get hurt. We know that. That's why people are off running backs for longevity. Also, the way you do it, everything you're saying right now, the way that Kyler does it now, the way that Josh Allen does it, except when he gets to the goal line.
You're going to say the way Josh Allen does it until about week 13, and then he's just trying to truck people.
And just tries to destroy everyone. But Daniels does that he just cuts up field, and it doesn't matter if somebody's coming from the side. He's just going to keep running until he gets hit. And that's why I understand the hesitation with him.
Yeah, and I feel like there's no upside to go along with it either. Like, let's say he does stay healthy and he's like let's say he's improved from last year. The offensive line is better. You mentioned the weapons that he got, whether it be Leggett or whether it be Deontay Johnson or the tight end, that let's say he improves this season and adds a little bit. And what does that make him, like quarterback 17? Great.
Fair. Then mostly because the running is a concern.
So I just don't see where the upside would ever come in to draft him to be. I mean, 2 quarterback league, sure. Superflex league, sure. But unless you're trying to have like a tertiary stack in your Underdog Best Ball, that like with all those guys because they're so damn cheap, which kind of worked. I mean, it worked out for me last year. I kept coming on this show and being like, hey, the Rams stack is super cheap. Now it sucked because you ended up with Cooper Kupp, who was useless as a first round pick or second round pick by the time he finished off drafts. But you got Puka, and you got Van Jefferson, and you got Kyron Williams, and you got Matt Stafford in like the final 5 rounds. And that really worked out well.
It did last year.
So maybe Carolina could be that team. I mean, the Bucs were the other team that were kind of the same way. Like, just no one drafted Buccaneers last year. They were a cheap stack. No one's drafting Panthers this year. I just don't see where it comes in. Like, at least with Baker a year ago, I guess Canales is there now too, so maybe he can coach up Bryce Young, but you have the built-in, they have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and Baker's not great, but he's shown flashes of being okay in the past. Put him in a competent system, maybe he just chucks to these guys. That's exactly what he did.
Well, and this kind of transitions into running back is where the Carolina Panthers could be that, and it could be a value. The problem is probably the biggest upside piece isn't really a value in my opinion, and that's Jonathan Brooks, because when they drafted him, before everybody goes nuts about this name because they're going to be like, oh, Jake, he was a bust. There's Cam Akers. I said he could be Cam Akers' rookie season, but that's a good thing. Go back to Cam Akers' rookie season. Dominated the last 5 weeks. Like December, then partly into November is the potential for Jonathan Brooks. Heck, it could be November and December for Jonathan Brooks. But the problem is where I'm out on him is because people are drafting him as already a top 30 running back. And I don't know that the Panthers push him. You bring up Canales, and I can see him leaning on Brooks, but I don't think that they do that out of the gate. I don't think that, yes, Miles Sanders, huge disappointment, mistake of a contract. Chuba Hubbard was good. Chuba Hubbard was fine replacing him. Why bring in somebody? If we're being honest about the Panthers, they win. They have a great season by their standards. They win 7 games, and that's a great season by their standards for what their team has built.
If they have the Cardinals season from last year, it's a big win for them.
And that's the problem here. So that's why I say is why pound the rock with Jonathan Brooks and risk somebody coming off an injury who could be your future superstar running back when you know you're at least 2 years away from competing. So I'm saying Jonathan Brooks second half, absolutely could see him being top 15 even because of his talent. But I'm not going to pay top 30 running back price knowing that it could be 2 months before I even get that.
So here's what I found interesting about early drafts, that Trey Benson is going ahead of Jonathan Brooks in Underdog Best Ball right now. Now they're within like 3 picks of each other. So running back number 28 for Trey Benson, running back number 32 for Jonathan Brooks. That's pick 97 and pick 101 overall. So they are separated by 4 spots on the board. Listen, I don't think that Benson is going to have any inherent value, at least early. He might get a handful of carries to keep John Connor, James Conner healthy. But James Conner was really good last year. He kind of makes this offense work in a really weird way. And I think this offense is well coached, that if anything would happen to Conner, then Benson, I think, would have actual value to really propel up. So I understand why he's being drafted ahead of Brooks, where best case, it feels like he's timeshare on a bad team.
Well, and I'm with you, as I think that Benson is terrific upside, has terrific upside if James Conner gets hurt. I think
it falls into it falls into that circumstance that you and I talk about a lot, is no one is drafting Trey Benson to start Trey Benson.
Right.
They're drafting him to see if James Conner gets hurt, and then they can play Trey Benson. People are drafting Brooks to play him, and you never want to play him.
And that's the problem. And as I was going to bring up that 100%, I was going to bring up that cost, and not to be like, look, I've missed a ton. This isn't because I'm not coming for you, Pat. I'm just saying AJ Dillon last year. And for you, to be honest, you weren't saying go spend a 6th rounder on AJ Dillon. But the people drafting AJ Dillon instead of Kyron Williams, as you brought up, were also right about that. Late, you're drafting them both for the same reason, as in the lead gets hurt. So why spend the 6th, 7th, 8th round pick on the exact same running back you can get in the 10th, 11th, 12th round? There's just no sense to it. So instead of drafting Benson and Brooks, and I like Benson, why not just draft Braylon Allen in case Breece Hall gets hurt? Or, I don't know, Kamani Vidal in case Gus Edwards gets hurt. And that checks it. Hell, one of my favorites. You know who fits his system 100% perfectly? Isaac Guerrero. He is a Shanahan running back up and up, through and through. And if something happens to Christian McCaffrey and he leapfrogs Elijah Mitchell, which I think is very plausible, Guerrero is a terrific, why draft these guys when you could just get a free one at the end?
I would tend to agree. And the Dillon thing didn't even work out at all once Aaron Jones went down, because he sucked when Aaron Jones was hurt. He only had viable weeks when Aaron Jones was healthy, and then no one used him.
Yeah. Hey, another one in this, Ray Davis, if something had happened to James Cook. Ray Davis might have some standalone value, but if something happened to James Cook, he'd be the guy.
I'm just trying to go down, like, outside of Brooks and Benson, though, like, you're probably better off taking these, like, granted, these guys might not even make the team by the time that we get there. But if you're doing your drafts right now, which I know a lot of people are, why they're seeking this out, that would be kind of the...
You know who's your guy? You know who your guy is?
Okay, yeah, here, 1 second. Let me look at the rookie running back list. And is it a rookie?
Yes, and it should stand out to you. For how many years we've talked about this team and your running back?
Let's see. Rasheen Ali?
There you go. Boom. Yeah. That is the Pat Mayo running back.
Easy answer. Just who is the guy who you don't think will get carries on Baltimore? That's the guy.
That's the one you want.
Well, who are they even running at? They're running Derrick Henry and then Keaton Mitchell when he comes back?
If healthy.
Question mark. It's Ali, so he might start the season as the Tajay Spears to Derrick Henry, who could be washed.
It's a great opportunity.
I mean,
trying to think of anybody's.
If he can somehow luck like those, yeah, you're right. This is exactly the type of running back that I would want to take. That 100%. He could just stumble his way into 10 touchdowns.
And I'll give you one more, and I'm not even the biggest fan of his, but if you're talking about the lead struggling last year, if he gets hurt again, hell, maybe if he doesn't even get hurt again, maybe he just looks as bad as he did last year. If Estime climbed to the top of the Broncos depth chart, wouldn't shock me. I mean, we're talking about, look at the guys in this backfield. This is a hodgepodge of running backs.
You're not all in on Javonte Williams anymore?
I never really was 100% in on him. But since he came, again, it's first year back from injury. I'm willing to give him a pass. I'm willing to give him a pass at how bad this offense looked last year. But if you took, he wouldn't be the first running back that didn't come back from an injury, even on a new day of the NFL where these injuries aren't career enders anymore. He wouldn't be the first one that just, doesn't look. I know this isn't a rookie, but you're going to tell me that people don't want Jerome Ford at all? Like, we're just assuming Nick Chubb is going to come back and be 100% week one. And Nick Chubb we used to know, and granted, they didn't really do anything in the draft that would tell us that they think otherwise, but I would just take a chance. I mean, we're just assuming he's going to be okay.
Why is Blake Corum being drafted over Jerome Ford or Gus Edwards or Zach Charbonnet right now? I don't get that.
Twofold. There's pre-draft Corum love. I was actually called a hater on Blake Corum, and actually somebody's like, I'm not even going to read an article that doesn't have him in tier 1 of running backs.
That you're interacting with. Where do you find these people? Where do they
the comments? Because I have to read the comments. We have this. No, we have to have this conversation every single year. I answer the Athletic comments and I talk to these people, and you don't have to do that. I could Blake Corum is Zach Moss to me, which I know Zach Moss at times has looked really good, but I still think Zach Moss is slightly above replacement level. But I'm saying this to say, if you said Zach Moss was on the Rams, I think he'd be drafted around the same spot because Kyren Williams is small. Kyren Williams getting 20 plus touches a game is not going to last this season. And I like Kyren Williams.
I like him too, but I mean, best case scenario, Corum starts to fill in for that role if Williams goes away. Right. Maybe it's his backfield. More than likely, they use some sort of hodgepodge committee, like we saw when Williams was out last year when they just re-signed. They'll probably re-sign Darrell Henderson off the street again to play games for them. They'll bring back Cam Akers. Everything's okay now, Sean McVay. Here, you can have 8 carries a game, and Corum, you can have 10 carries a game. I just don't understand. Gus Edwards is going picks after him, and
that makes no sense.
Starter for the Chargers.
Yeah, that makes no sense. No, you forgot Ronnie Crimea Rivers. You forgot about him too.
Which guy? Oh yeah, Ronnie Rivers. Yeah, but he blew his. Didn't he blow his ACL out playing special teams last year?
Yeah, but he's supposed to be okay now.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of names going around.
I think people are assuming McVay, if anything happens to Kyren Williams, that he would just turn to Blake Corum for 20 touches a game, just like he has been with other running backs. I think that's the assumption. I'm trying to explain why people are taking him there. I'm with you. There's no way I'm entering or leaving a draft and saying, you know what, Gus Edwards is on the board. I'm going to take Blake Corum instead.
Yeah, because I think that Corum fits into this mold of what you were talking about the other rookie running backs who are all going in the last round. There's no difference.
Where's Jalen Wright going?
Jalen Wright's actually going a few picks after. He's going 42nd, but he's 3rd on the depth chart.
I know. I'm surprised he's not higher. Not just because of the excitement of it's the Dolphins and he's fast. What about Marshawn Lloyd?
Marshawn Lloyd is going. Where we got? Why Marshawn Lloyd? He's going at pick number 45, 1 spot after Kendry Miller and 1 spot ahead of Ty Chandler.
I don't hate it. I like a lot of Lloyd. I think he immediately steps past A.J. Dillon, and then Josh Jacobs has been hurt the past, what, 2 years, 3 years? He's getting banged
I mean,
up. I mean,
it
not,
feels like
not a lot.
Where's Jacobs going? Jacobs is going at pick. Jesus, where is he? Running back number 9, pick number 28. I kind of feel good about him. Like they're
Running back 28?
Like if he can stay healthy, like he's gonna be awesome.
Wait, you said running back 28, right?
No, pick number 28, running back 9.
Oh,
Sorry.
because no, I might have just misheard you. Running back 9, I don't even hate. I think that Jacobs is in a situation that like he has to stay healthy. And it's actually 2 years ago was the only year that he played all season. He missed one game in each of the seasons before that. I actually have him at RB8. I have him sandwiched between Derrick Henry and Kyron Williams. I'll take him straight up over Kyron Williams because I know who Josh Jacobs is and I know he's going to be the lead the entire year. I love Kyron Williams. Until the draft, I sat here saying, why is Kyron Williams keep sliding down draft boards when he's done nothing since the season ended? But it is Sean McVay. It is the potential that Sean McVay says, you know what? You had one bad week. I don't feel like maybe I'll even try to trade you this week.
What last few wide receivers I wanted to talk about? Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey is one of them. Where does he fall on the Chargers depth chart? Because I'm having a hard time understanding how people are assessing the Chargers offense, because Herbert is going as quarterback 15 off the board. So obviously they don't think that the passing offense is going to be any good, yet no one's drafting the running backs either. Did they think that the Chargers are going to score 8 points a game?
I don't know. I am drafting the running backs, as we just talked about with Gus Edwards. I do think McConkey was one of my favorite wide receivers heading this that weren't in tier 1. Being the number 1 would not shock me. I think that he brings everything to this. Look, you've seen the comparisons. People are calling him Cooper Kupp. Now, of course, you say Cooper Kupp and people lose their minds because we're talking about one of the best wide receivers, and he was the best wide receiver in fantasy football. So let's chill out there on a little bit of what he can do. But that, I guess, is his pure 100% outcome ceiling. Josh Palmer will be in play. I don't think Quentin Johnston is dead. I think he's another one. Not so much like Bryce Young, but this time last year, Quentin Johnston was a first-round wide receiver. People left the draft saying, you know what, his upside is immense. We know he's raw. And what happened? He was raw. He looked like garbage at times last year. And all of a sudden, people are like, Quentin Johnston's career's over. He's done. He's trash. If he told me pecking order, for upside, I would go McConkey, and I would actually make Quentin Johnston my number 2 on this team ahead of Joshua Palmer. Joshua Palmer's a fine player. I just don't think he has the ceiling of these other wide receivers, including McConkey.
Did Quentin Johnston learn how to catch in the offseason? Because that would be helpful to his receiving profession.
I don't think that was ever going to be his game, though.
Catching the ball?
No, as in like a 65% reception wide receiver. I think his game was always going to be like 55%. And there are wide receivers in the NFL right now that are top 30, 40 wide receivers that only catch 55% of their passes.
With the way that they're structured and what we perceive that they want to do with Harbaugh, and that's run the ball as much as possible, do you think Herbert runs more?
I don't think a ton more.
Okay. Any more receivers?
Who haven't we talked about? We talked about all of them. Odunze. I know everybody's talking about Malachi Corley and his wonderful slow motion screen pass that they keep tweeting out. I don't know why. Oh, there's 2 more. 2 more. Roman Wilson, I think number 2 immediately for the Steelers. This is reading some tea leaves, or I guess just reports. Mike Tomlin was out there for the bowl practice and liked Roman Wilson so much that he actually he said, you're going to go out here and line up against Quentin Mitchell, the number 1 corner that went in the draft. He's like, you're playing against him every single snap. Wanted to test him. And Roman Wilson caused such a problem against everybody else he faced that was the only person that actually contended with him. He's stepping in as the 2. Russell Wilson is an upgrade of Kenny Pickett. Russell Wilson isn't a top 15, 20, 10 quarterback, but he has enough that George Pickens is not the only one catching balls there. I think Roman Wilson's in a nice spot, and Adonai Mitchell for the Colts. Now, my hesitation on the Colts and Adonai Mitchell is, do we really want anybody after Pittman? Because now we're talking about a potential Ravens-like offense. And how much does the number 2 account for? But maybe he's Mark Andrews at wide receiver.
Okay. I can get behind that. I guess the only other one, I mean, I'm in the Northeast, so I hear about these guys. And I happen to have a crazy person in my life who's a Jets fan. So tell me about Malachi Corley, the Yak King.
That's the thing. Yak King. So, okay, great. He's going to do a lot after the catch. But is he even the 3? Is he 3 in the game?
I mean, he's probably better. He's probably better than Alan Lazard, who might be the worst receiver in football.
It's true. Like it's you know what the funny thing is like apparently I'm way down on Garrett Wilson because we're talking about people wanting to put him inside the top 10. And I was like, do you realize that's a 4-point per game jump from last 2 seasons, his rookie season and last year? And granted, he didn't have Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers played a whole 4 snaps. That's a big jump people are putting on Garrett Wilson just because Aaron Rodgers is at quarterback. And you go up and down.
They added Mike Williams and they drafted a receiver. Breece Hall is probably healthier than he was at this point last year. And there's just other bodies around too to detract from him. Last year, it was just him.
It was just him. And that's what I was going to say. Corley, not the number 2. Probably great slot out of weapon. You know what? I'll give you a comparison. Best case scenario. Aaron Rodgers is 100% healthy. Looks like he did with Green Bay. And there are the Bengals offense. Corley is Tyler Boyd. What does that mean at best case scenario? Wide receiver 40?
I mean, this guy just reeks of Lynn Bowden Jr.
That's
who I see when I see it.
That's fair. I wouldn't say that bad, but I get your point. Like my point being is best case scenario, everybody hits, everybody clicks. This offense is unstoppable, and you're still only going to be wide receiver 40 because you're the 3rd wide receiver on this team.
What about Jalen Polk?
Yeah. What is Drake May the day 1 starter, and how raw is he going to be? And
I had this argument with Custon Jeff that I see no reason for him not to be the day 1 starter. And I had people be like, "Oh, he's raw. You have to keep him and sit him down for a year." It's like, who cares? Like we can play Jacoby Brissett over him?
No, but you mean Drake May? Sorry, I thought you were talking about Polk for a second.
No. I was talking about Drake May. But I was like, if Polk is going to be out there with Drake May, like I don't think it really matters.
I don't disagree with you. It just seems weird that, like, I know people are like, oh, Drake May needs an entire year. What are you taking a quarterback at 3 for that needs an entire year, is my opinion. This is why I go to J.J. McCarthy. It's like, people are like, well, Sam Darnold might start a few. Why? Why are you top 10? You made draft capital to potentially have to move up for your guy who is going to be your quarterback. And even if it's 10, 11, 12, even if it's 15th, you're really going to sit him for Sam Darnold? No, I actually think all 4 of them are starting right out of the gate. And to go to Polk, Kendrick Bourne, if he stays healthy, Demario Douglas, Polk's going to be in the mix. They brought in KJ Osborne. They drafted Javon Baker. Like, I just feel like this is going to be wide receivers death by 1,000 cuts, as you're not going to be able to touch any of them. You're just going to get killed every single time you try. You're going to be chasing your tail the entire year.
Is Jamari Thrash James Thrash's son?
I don't think so, unless I missed something.
I don't hear that many people with the last name Thrash, is all I'm saying. And
that's fair.
He also played wide receiver in the NFL.
He's also way down my list. I would take even Luke McCaffrey before him. Run first offense.
Can we just get Cornelius Johnson to be better than Quentin Johnson on the Chargers? Because I would love that. That's a great name.
Possibility. It is legit a possibility.
Give me someone who's good, whose name is Cornelius in the NFL. I am all in on that. But people have been asking, who is this year's Puka? It's like, it's no one. That comes around like what? Once every 7 years?
Not even 7. The entire 2000s. Anybody drafted?
Like, when was Bolden drafted? What was he? He wasn't a 1st round pick, was he?
Anquan? I don't think so. I thought he was like
a 4th round pick or something.
I was going to say 3rd.
Yeah, but he would be like the only comp to what Puka did last year. Oh my God. Do you know how old Anquan Bolden is right now?
He was almost 3rd. He was he was late 2nd round.
Late 2nd. So yeah, even he doesn't really qualify for that. Anquan's only 43.
Oh. He's close to my age.
Yeah. He's like the same age as us. He just seems so much. I remember being so young when he was good that it's shocking to see him as the same age.
This makes me feel bad about my life that I'm also 6'1". Now, granted, he's got me by 40 pounds, but like, how much better?
I saw you post that shirts off pic on X, getting the ladies all hot and bothered. Maybe some of the men too.
Did that not look awful? I took my shirt off when I got home to show Nicole, and she just started laughing.
Was it the first time that you had the suction cups?
No, but she's only done the cups in like 2 or 3 spots. And then she's never done it like, so she kept dragging it across my chest. And when she got done, she's like, oh, you're actually starting to spot bleed. I'm like, you dragged it across my chest like 20 times. What did you expect?
The move is to get the heated cups. That is the next level of cupping.
I'll have to tell her about that.
It is not all places do it due to insurance purposes, but it's very effective. Because instead of using like the suction on the silicone cups, they heat up glass cups to remove all the air, and it's just whoa.
Really?
Yeah. I get it done to my IT bands.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's. I'm gonna have to ask her about that next time I go.
Yeah. All these years, I thought I had back problems, but it just turns out I had like quad tightness.
Isn't it funny how much that stuff just like stems from someplace else?
Yeah, I was convinced for years, like, oh, I have a slip disc or something like that. It's like, no, my back is perfectly fine. It's all my hips,
Do you know-
my glutes, my quads, and like the side of my legs.
Do you know how old we're getting?
Yeah, I mean, I feel it every day, Jake.
Well, I was just about to say, I hyperextended my back by stretching it on the edge of a bed.
Hey, don't feel bad about that. Sammy Sosa threw out his back sneezing in the dugout.
Which is what we laughed about it at the time, and now I feel bad for him.
Yeah, who was it? Was it Tom Glavine or Greg Maddux? Maybe it was John Smoltz. It was one of the Braves pitchers. Had to be scratched from a start because they tried to iron their shirt while it was on them.
I think that was Glavine.
Was it?
Hold on. I knew exactly where you were going because I was already typing it in for when it was John Smoltz.
It was Smoltz. Yeah, I knew it was a Braves pitcher.
Oh, now they're saying it's an urban legend.
Yeah, because he's in a spot of prestige being a commentator. Can't have that. You can't tune in to Sunday Night Baseball, wherever the hell not that I do that John Smoltz calls the playoff game, and take his opinion seriously, and then Google John Smoltz and be like, yeah, he also tried to iron his shirt while he was wearing it.
And now it's saying that it actually wasn't him wearing the shirt and ironing it. It was hot water from the iron that splashed while he was using it. Yeah. Okay.
Now that can happen. That's happened to me. It didn't cost me. I didn't have to miss my start. It didn't ruin my day, but it does hurt. This is all a big thing that people should just be using steamers, not irons.
That was one of the best purchases.
It's so good, right?
Well, I mean, people look at me like, this is all I wear on your shows. Well, my shows too. Like, so people, I actually do own collared shirts. Maybe I'll have to wear one day.
Yeah, I mean, you go golfing from time to time. It's not like they're going to let you on the course wearing that.
Actually, I haven't been I've got to get back out this year. I haven't been since I got my shoulder surgery. I haven't been able to.
No, I've been out 5 times already this year.
I'm kind of jealous.
The weather has been nice in the east coast of Canada.
My awesome wife also got me the swing evaluation for my birthday, so I got that set up to be able to.
Here's the thing.
Back in gear.
Just tell her that you went and don't go, because all those things do is make you feel bad about yourself.
So it's like being on Twitter or X.
Or answering comments in The Athletic, where everyone can find your work.
Exactly.
What do you got going on over there?
I actually get to breathe for a few weeks because all the draft stuff was from Thursday through Monday. I didn't sleep, and now the projections are out, so you can customize and tell. There you go. Make me feel bad about myself where I messed up your projections of what you wanted to believe, because now I get to just update that as I publish the projections, and Tyler Boyd signs 3 hours later. It's like that's where I'm at now. I get to breathe.
Yeah, I think if you're just tuning in now for like football content, you've been out of the loop for a little bit and enjoy seeing Jake and I. I'm going to have a whole bunch of people on. We're going to start doing some underdog drafts, best ball drafts, and talk through different players of the day. Basically just copy Pete's formula, where we're going to put in some rules where you have to draft X amount of rookies on your team. So just to give us some content to talk about. But if you do want to help out the show, use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now. Deposit match or deposit bonus, depending on what time that you're doing it. And if you're doing it before the PGA Championship, you get a free square for the PGA Championship in the Pick'em game if Pick'em is available in your state. So I would recommend that you go do that right now. You can subscribe to the Mayo Media newsletter, which will have extra info in it, and just subscribe to the podcast. We have a huge giveaway coming up for the PGA Championship. So if you tune in regularly to the Pat Mayo Experience, and you'll already know about that. If you don't, probably should have said this at the top of the show, but probably up to like $2,000 worth of stuff and giving away. It's going to be super easy to do. So go check out the newsletter. I have all of the information in there for that coming up over the weekend. All right, smash a like while you're here, sub to the channel, and we'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!